All right, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Mylio Photos Coffee Break. My name is Angela, and today I'm joined by a couple of really cool people. We're going to be talking about adding a new computer or a new external drive to your Mylio Photos setup today. And to help me out with that, I invited JC Figueroa, our head of customer success, to come and help out and answer any questions because this is a topic that can get really deep and complicated really quick. But what we're going to do today is give you kind of the best practice and high level golden path to make this easy. Now, there's a lot of things that you can do in Mylio that make configurations very unique. We will touch on some of those, but we're not going to dive deep into those today. So, wanted to kind of give you an expectation of what to expect. Before we dive in, a couple of things I have up on the screen. We are right now running a customer feedback survey at community.mylio.com. Lori has a direct link to that. She can go ahead and pop into the chat, as well as another link that Rich Harrington, our head of product, posted today, asking for some feedback on our navigation inside the app. We are working on some really big things at Mylio and would love to hear what's important to you, what you'd like to see, and get your feedback on some of the designs that we are kicking around right now for future development. So please make sure you head over to community.mylio.com and let us know what you think. If you haven't done those surveys yet, please do them. All right. I also want to let you know that we have other events going on for you next week. Tuesday and Thursday, we'll have our live Q&As. These are at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday and Thursday. Friday, we'll have another coffee break like this, which are short tutorials followed up by time for questions. Next week's topic is 3 dots, endless possibilities, mastering the Mylio Photos Actions menu. So we're going to be diving into a specific menu in Mylio and showing you what options are there because you might not know what all is available. So that will be next week's coffee break. So with that, let's go ahead and get ready for new computer, new drive, how to transition safely with Mylio Photos. The reason we wanted to cover this is because there are a lot of different things that can go wrong with getting new software, but it should be something that is fun and exciting. You've spent time finding a new thing to buy, you've invested in it, and you should have fun. And what I want to do today is give you the tools you need with Mylio Photos to make that transition as smooth and easy as possible. So we're going to cover a few foundational things. First off is Mylio as software plus service. We'll talk about a vault and why you really do need two of them or more. So first off, Mylio is a software and a service. So the software portion of Mylio Photos is the application that you install on your computer or your phone or whatever. That is a software. It runs just like any other application and it manages your files, displays your library, handles editing, organization, and so forth. You install it and it runs like any other application. The service aspect of Mylio is the sync layer that runs in the background. And this is what makes Mylio fundamentally different. It tracks which device is which, it routes files between your various devices, and it is tied to your Mylio account. So each device logged into your Mylio account can talk to other devices on your Mylio account. And when you get new hardware, you're not just moving the app from one device to another. The service needs to know about that change. So that's where this becomes really important. And every new device needs to know where files should live and how they fit into your existing ecosystem. If you skip steps in this part of the process, the service layer gets confused and then the transition can get really messy. But we're going to show you how to make this super easy. JC, is there anything that you want to add on the software plus service aspect here?
No, you covered it beautifully.
All right, cool. All right. So the first thing we're going to get into here is the vault. And we've talked a lot about vaults here on coffee breaks and various webinars. This is your safety net when you need to get new hardware. What we recommend is having at least one vault that holds your entire Mylio Photos library. So this is any single device that you designate in Mylio Photos to hold all of your pictures, your videos, all your media, documents, whatever you have in your Mylio Photos library. It has the full resolution originals. It has all of your XMP sidecar files, which is your metadata. It has the optimized, the thumbnails, and the underlying database that runs Mylio Photos. So if any one of your devices dies, your vault has everything. So that's what you need in order to take that to go from one device to another. The vault enables you to rebuild from any other single device. Mylio Photos syncs from your vault. No other manual file transfer is needed. You do need to have a valid Mylio Photos Plus subscription. That's part of that sync account transfer stuff. And if you don't have a vault, before you start any migration process to a new drive or a new computer, set up a vault. If you don't have one yet, this is a great time to do that. Now, we talked about adding one vault. I really highly, super recommend having at least two because hard drives fail. And if you only have one vault, one single copy of your library, if that particular device becomes compromised, you are in a position where you're at serious data risk. So, two vaults means you have a backup and you have something to fall back on. So, if one of your drives starts to fail, you have another complete copy of your library that you can take and carry on with. We also recommend the 3-2-1 backup rule. And what that means is you have three copies of your library, two of them local. Those can be your two local vaults. Let's say external hard drives is ideal. And then an offsite copy. That's your disaster recovery for if something happens at your home location or wherever you primarily work. So that's the 3-2-1, three copies of your data on at least two different types of devices with one of them offsite. For most people, what this looks like is they have their computer, they have two external drives, both designated as vaults, and then they have something offsite like Mylio Drive Plus or some other cloud backup, or maybe they have another vault attached to another computer at another location. There's a lot of different ways to make that happen, but you want to have at least two local copies. So, two external hard drives that sit on your desk next to your computer, each one with a copy of everything you need for Mylio to run. And that's going to make your life so much easier. So, if you don't have a second vault and you only have one, this is a great time to go get another drive and add one before you start any hardware migration. Again, it's there to protect you and make your life a lot easier. So before you go any further with getting started and adding in that new device, you want to go into Mylio Photos and open up the dashboard, go into devices, locate your vault devices, and confirm that they are fully synced. If things are not fully in sync, wait. You want to make sure those vault devices have everything in your library, they have that full copy before you try to take that drive and transfer it to a new machine. So let me show you really quick what that looks like. I'm going to go here into Mylio and I'm in my dashboard. That's this little speedometer icon here on the left. We're going to go into devices and we're going to scroll down here to where it says drives and clouds. And I have several devices here that are designated as vaults. I have Mylio Drive Plus, that's an offsite backup. I have my Mylio Photos Vault, which is an attached external hard drive. I also have a NAS device, which is a vault. So I have three vaults on my system, which is really a very solid combination. And I want to make sure, just at a glance here, they all have this nice blue check mark. That means that they are in sync, they have all of my data, and if I needed to, I could take any one of these devices and rebuild my entire library on any machine that I needed to with that information. All right. So the ways that hardware transitions can go sideways, we get excited and we move too fast. You unplug something early, you power down, you eject things, Mylio isn't in sync, all of your files are not there. That is issue number one. Issue number two is not having that second vault. That is your safety net to make sure that if something goes wrong with one device, you have an entire copy of your library on another device that you can fall back on. It makes the hardware transition much smoother. So first, let's tackle the topic of getting a brand new computer. The first thing that we're going to talk about is whether you should do a fresh installation or restore that computer from a backup. A lot of us have software that we use to back up our computers on a day-to-day basis, which is great. I highly recommend that. Excuse me. Sorry. So if you have something like a time machine and Mylio's back or your computer's backing up over and over to this other device, if your computer dies, you plug in that other device and you can restore from it. That's a really good idea for kind of protection. But if your computer is really old, let's say you've had this computer for 5+ years, that computer has accumulated a lot of stuff on it that you probably don't need or use anymore. Keep that backup that's been running, but when you get your new computer, treat it like it's a brand new, fresh device. That's the best practice. You're going to have a much better experience overall, not just with Mylio, but in general, by not bringing over a bunch of clutter from your old machine. So, for most people, the best recommendation is to do a clean system installation so you don't have those user clutter. Mylio will install predictably. It syncs from your vault, very, very smooth, and you don't risk having duplicate devices or identity conflicts inside of Mylio. The trade-off here is it does require installing all of your apps fresh and configuring all your settings manually. And that's what trips up a lot of people because it does take more time up front. But it is absolutely worth it, especially if your computer is 5+ years old or even kind of approaching that time point. If your computer is only a couple of years old and you did a fresh install a couple of years ago, you're probably fine to restore from your backup. Um, Everybody's going to make their own choice here. I can make the recommendation. If you do decide to restore from a backup and you're cloning that backup drive to your new computer, you want to make sure you never, ever, ever open up Mylio on your old computer again. What that does, if that happens, is Mylio gets confused which device is which, and it doesn't know how to handle the fact that there's now dual identities of the same computer. It can create a mess really, really fast. So if you're keeping the old computer and you're cloning that to a new computer, just make sure Mylio is not running, make sure the background application is not running, and never open Mylio on that old machine again. Otherwise, do need to do a fresh install of at least Mylio on the new machine, and that way each computer has its own distinct identity. JC, anything you'd like to add there?
This goes back to what you said early in the session that Mylio is both the software and the service. So if you clone a device to the service, that device, just like your slide says, assumes the identity of the old device. Um, And now, if both devices come online, the service is going to go, okay, which one's which? I have, it's kind of like that meme of Spider-Man pointing at himself, which is which. So it's very, very important that you remember that each device in Mylio is connecting to the service, and the service needs to know what that device is. If you want to change the hardware that represents a device, that's fine to do, but discontinue the old hardware.
Absolutely.
Just, I can't hammer that enough. And actually, one more thing, because conversely, if you reset the software on a device, but don't unregister the device, then you're going to see that device showing up twice in your device list. And the previous instance of the device in support, we call those devices ghost devices, right? Because they're never going to come online again. Is the same device that you have now. So that's not what this session is about, but it's another point of information to understand that there's the software and the service. If you reset one, you want to reset the other. So be sure to do that.
Perfect. So that kind of segues to this. When you get a new computer, you're going one of two ways. You're either adding a new computer to your setup, so maybe you now have a desktop computer and a laptop, or one computer is old or failing and you are replacing it with a new computer. So if you're replacing your computer, you're going to install Mylio on that machine, log in with your Mylio account, let Mylio sync, and then when everything's happy, unregister the old computer. If you are adding a computer and you want them to operate as two separate distinct devices, you're going to install Mylio, log in with your account, and just let it sync. And then in your device panel, you will see two distinct computers listed. So that's what to expect when you get a new computer. With linked folders, a lot of people ask questions about, well, I have linked folders. What do I do with those when I'm transitioning? Well, the good thing is, we talked a lot about vaults a few minutes ago. A vault holds everything, including all of your linked folders. So this is where you get the practical payoff of having a vault, is your new computer can get everything it needs without the old computer even being involved. I know there's a lot of you out there who do have unique configurations, and if you do want your file system to look a certain way and operate a certain way, this is a great time to reach out to our support team and to do that from inside the app. So you're going to go up to the help menu and you're going to choose contact Mylio support right there. And that's going to allow you to attach logs and send that to support, and they can take a look at what your device configuration is. They can see what your linked folders are, They can't see what's in them. They can just see where your folders are located and help make sure that that transition goes smoothly for you. JC, do you want to add anything else for that?
Um, yeah, I will add to not hesitate to contact support. So link folders is one of the coolest, most unique features that Mylio has because it allows you to create a very intricate network of content that comprise your library, right? You can have folders that live in different devices and in different locations, and you can simply point to those folders and have Mylio treat every one of those folders as part of the library. But when you add this layer of complexity and you have to replace one of the devices from which those folders are linked, you have to ensure that one, you understand where to find your media if that device disappear, and two, that when you replace the device, if you want those link folders to still live or exist in that device, you have to do it in a very specific way. If you contact support, we can, particularly if you contact support from the app, like Angela pointed out, we get a full configuration of your system. We get to see what folders are linked from what devices, and then we can give you specific step-by-step instructions on how to replace a certain device. All that
Awesome.
said, if you have a separate vault, not a computer that's designated as a vault, but a separate hard drive, at least one, from which you haven't linked any folders, that is always going to have all your media. So that again is part of the beauty of Mylio. You can create a very complex layer or web of linked folders, but the moment you add a new vault and you let that vault synchronize, that vault is going to contain everything. And even the folder structure in that vault is going to represent where things were added from, right? So let's say that you have two computers and each computer has a pictures folder, because every computer has a pictures folder. In your vault, you'll see computer A and underneath the pictures folder, and computer B and underneath it or within it, the pictures folder for that computer. So Mylio is intelligent enough to recreate that on your vault. So can't emphasize enough. Having those vaults is it just makes things so easy and the likelihood of you losing media so much it's greatly diminished if you do it that way. But yeah, don't hesitate to contact us. That's what we're here for.
Awesome. All right. So now that we've talked about getting a new computer, let's talk about if you need to get a new external drive. There's a couple of different reasons you might need to do this. The first one is maybe the one you have is running out of space. You've been taking a lot of pictures, and the drive that you bought a couple of years ago is now full, and it's time to get something bigger. Or something might be going wrong with the device, and you might have a drive that's failing. That also happens, and we're going to talk through both of those scenarios here. So, first off, let's talk about when your external drive is full. This is kind of the more fun scenario. You've been doing cool things, you're taking pictures, and now you just have to go get a new hard drive because you've accumulated so many memories, you need more storage space. So Mylio is going to give you a warning that disk storage is full or getting full, and it'll show as a red banner at the top of Mylio, and then if you go into the dashboard devices, it will show there. And that's your signal to act. It's not necessarily an emergency, but it is like, okay, this needs to be dealt with because once a drive is full with Mylio, syncing is going to pause because there's nowhere for stuff to go. So when you get a brand new drive, what you're going to want to do is reformat that drive. And we recommend for Mac computers to do the APFS format and for Windows to do NTFS. If you have a drive that you need to take back and forth between a Mac and a Windows machine, I believe that's the exFAT format, right, JC?
Yeah, that is the only format currently that will work with both systems seamlessly.
Perfect. So, but in general, if you're, Mac only household, use APFS. If you're Windows only, use NTFS. And
And
then once
Angela,
that,
I'm sorry if I
oh,
may. So, um, the exFAT format is a very, very old format. It's been around for a long time, and the fact that it can work with Windows and Mac is a great advantage. Is very convenient if you're in that kind of hybrid environment. However, because it is a very old file system format, It's not as efficient as the modern formats that are constantly updated, like the Apple APFS or NTFS in Windows. So your drive is not going to perform as well, and you're going to waste a lot of space in that drive if you're using exFAT versus using one of the more modern uh, mechanisms. Um, if you're in a hybrid environment, a good thing to do would be to have a drive that's dedicated to Windows and connected to your Windows machine, and then have another drive that's dedicated to Apple and connect that to your Apple machine. That's going to render the best performance with the caveat or the con that you can move that drive back and forth if it's formatted in that way. But that's it. I'll stop being a geek. Yeah.
No, that's good info. There's always trade-offs with these decisions. It's not that one is necessarily a wrong decision. You know, what's right for you might not be right for somebody else. So it's good to have all of the information. Once your drive is formatted, so we say format the drive because when you get it straight out of the box from whatever store you bought it from, they typically come pre-installed with other software that you may or may not need. And if you don't need that software that comes pre-installed, that's what you do is you reformat the drive, it wipes everything on there, and it gives you a clean slate to start with. Once you've done that, you go into Mylio and you choose to add a vault. So you're going to do that from the dashboard, devices, and add vault. You select your new drive and Mylio just syncs. So let me show you where that's at really quick. Go to my dashboard, little speedometer, devices, and then up here at the very top, if my Mylio is not frozen, I don't know why it keeps doing this when I'm in live sessions. So up at the very top of the devices panel, there is a button for add vault. You click that, you select your vault, and you go ahead and just let Mylio do its thing. It's very, very quick and straightforward. Once that vault's been added, go ahead and check for that blue check mark to make sure it's in sync. And if you are replacing an older vault, something older that's run out of space that you no longer want to use with Mylio, you can go ahead and unregister that device. But don't do that until you've confirmed that everything is in sync and happy. And once that's done, unregister the device if you're no longer using it with Mylio. One thing you can do with an older drive that is running short on space, but you still want to use it with Mylio, is you can use one of the other sync policies in Mylio or use a sync collection and have some other subset of your media stored there. Maybe it'll make a great travel drive that you want to just keep your best images on or your most recent stuff. So there's other things you can do with Mylio with a drive that is some subset of your library, not a vault, doesn't have to hold everything. So that's an alternative to unregistering a device. If you still want to use it with Mylio, don't unregister it. But if it's a drive that you want to retire from Mylio and no longer use with Mylio, you sever that connection by doing unregister. It doesn't delete anything on that drive, but it tells Mylio that drive basically no longer exists and it will no longer sync. Now,
Angela,
one,
I'm sorry. Can
please,
I add something to unregistering a device?
yes.
When you go to unregister a device, whether it's a drive or something else, pay close attention to what the software is telling you. You're gonna see, when you click that unregister button, you're gonna see one of two messages. One is gonna say type confirm to unregister, which means literally that. Type the word confirm, and then Mali will be like, okay, they really mean it. I'm gonna unregister it. But you might also get a message that says, hey, this device has originals that are nowhere else in your library. So do you really want to unregister it? And that means that there's media in that device that has not synchronized to your other devices. A lot of people ignore that message. And when they do, they end up with something called lost originals, which Lori's going to put a link up for us as to what lost originals are. But simple advice is pay attention. And if you get the message that says, oh, I have originals here that have not been synced, let that device synchronize to your other devices. Of course, if the device is broken and not working, then you have no choice. But just pay attention.
Yeah, reading the dialogues that pop up is always a good idea. There is one other option I do want to point out that exists, and this is what we call an advanced option because it requires doing a little bit of work at the file system level.
Mhm.
If you have a very large library, and let's say you want to take one vault that's running out of space and you want to replace it, hand it off entirely to another drive that's larger, you can take and copy. the Mylio folder over from one drive to another and let that happen at the file system level. The reason you might want to do that with a large library is doing it at the file system level is much faster. If you're using Mylio to synchronize from one drive to another, that takes more time because Mylio is having to do a lot of other routing through that software and service aspect that we talked about earlier. So it can be a lot faster to do it at the file system, but once you do that, again, because of that service aspect, you cannot have Mylio running with both of those drives connected because Mylio is going to get confused and it's going to cause a mess if it thinks that that drive exists twice. So there are some very specific steps to follow. There is a support article that we wrote about this with every step that you need to know. I think Lori probably already put that into the chat for us. So if that's something that you want to explore, the option exists. It is faster, but it has, like I said, its own trade-offs, and it's what we call advanced because you have to go and dig around in the file system.
And if you have link folders from that drive, I suggest you contact support.
Yes. All right. So the more scary option here is when a drive starts to fail. And even if you have other backups and you know your stuff is protected elsewhere, it's never a good feeling when a drive starts to go sideways. Some of the things that you might notice are really slow performance when a drive was working really fast and all of a sudden it's just being really, really clunky and things don't seem to be, moving or loading. That's something to watch out for. There's something called smart errors, clicking or grinding sounds. If a drive is making really unhealthy sounding noises, that's something to pay attention to. Another red flag is if Mylio is constantly telling you it needs to do catalog repairs. This can be a symptom of a drive going sideways. If this is happening, that's something you need to act on immediately. This is not something you can sit around and wait on because when a drive is starting to fail, you have a very limited window of getting data off of that drive before it's unrecoverable or very, very expensive and tedious to recover. So, one thing to note is if you have a second vault, you are covered. Doesn't mean you can't stop and just play it safe. You need to go out and get another drive and get it replaced so you have another working second copy. But it's not a time to panic. So you can add a new replacement drive. Mylio will sync from the healthy vault, and then you can unregister the old or failing device once the sync is complete. So having that second vault is so, so super important for this exact reason because drives, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when they will fail. If you have a drive failing and it is your only vault, this is a very serious situation. Get that new drive, get it connected, and let Mylio sync as much as it can, and then reach out to support. They can guide you through trying to get as much data off of that drive as possible and what you can do moving forward from there. Sometimes when you have a drive that goes sideways, you might have to look into doing some sort of um, what's it called? Basically having another company get that data off of that drive for you. And it can be very expensive. Again, it's much, much cheaper to have two vaults than to pay somebody to do data recovery. JC, anything you want to add here?
Uh, I was answering questions, so I wasn't paying attention. But no, no, we talked about this, and
Yeah,
that's exactly right. It's act early,
yeah.
um, and Malia will complain if your drive is not working correctly. And I'm going to briefly tell people why that is. So, one of the things that is constantly happening for all of your devices when you're using the Mali application is that Mali is not only writing data, like the actual media files to those devices, is writing to the catalog file, the database that remembers everything about the organization work that you've done, right? One of the things that we strive to help you preserve is not just preserving your media, but preserving how you've organized that media, which is why every device, phone, computer, and particularly hard drives, has a copy of that catalog. Now imagine you are writing on a yellow legal pad of paper, right? And as you're writing, somebody walks by and yanks that pad of paper away. You're probably going to leave a streak of ink, and even when you get the pad back, you're going to be confused as to, okay, where was I? I need to erase this, right? So the same thing happens if the computer is writing information to that database and that drive, because it's failing, momentarily disappears. Your catalog is going to start complaining and saying that it has errors. So that's why when you see a catalog notification, the catalog on this device needs to be repaired. That means that something went wrong when Mylio was writing data to it. And that if that's happening consistently, that might mean that that drive is acting up and might be on its way out.
Good stuff to watch out
I like
for.
sharing that analogy because people can relate to like, oh yeah, I
Yeah,
get
it
it.
makes a lot of sense. That's a great analogy. All right. So some tips to go ahead and finish up once you've got your new devices connected, things are syncing, when to unregister. So when you're completely done with the device and you no longer want to use it with Mylio Photos, you want to make sure your originals are stored on another vault and your new devices are in sync. That's a good time to unregister the old devices. If you don't want to unregister your devices, if your stuff is not in sync yet, if this is your only vault, or if you clone one device to replace another, just stop using the old device. Again, that service aspect, you don't want to have two devices with the same identity trying to work with Mylio. It can cause all sorts of problem. And then the last thing to remember here is when you unregister a device, this is a permanent action. There's no going back and telling Mylio to start syncing with this device again. The only way to do that is basically add it as a brand new device and let Mylio resync everything once more. But it doesn't delete anything that's on that device. So if you unregister a device and there are pictures there on that device that you realize you still need, you can go ahead and re-import those back into Mylio. Those files still exist. Unregistering doesn't delete anything. If you're in doubt, leave it registered. A dormant device doesn't cause any harm. You're just going to see that potentially ghost device sitting there that's going, okay, what is this? It's never coming online. So, anything else there to add, JC?
No, ghost devices don't harm anything, but they do add confusion sometimes. So the easiest way to recognize if a device is a ghost device is they often have the same name as another device that is online. So for example, if you have JC iPhone and JC iPhone parentheses 1 or parentheses 2 or parentheses 7, um, just turn Mylio on your phone, and what you'll see on your computer is that one of those multiple devices is going to come online. The lettering will turn white. It'll say it's online. So you know that is the correct device. Everything else with the same name is a ghost device. So you can unregister those other devices. But if you're not sure, just leave it or contact support. I will tell you what to do.
Absolutely. All right, so a couple of final checklists. If you get a new computer, first off, confirm that your vaults are fully in sync. And if you only have one vault, get a second one before you do anything else. Second step, do a fresh install of Mylio Photos on your new computer. That is by far the easiest and best way for most people. I know it takes a little bit more time. There are ways to work around if you want to do a clone from another machine or an old backup, but you're going to have a much better experience going forward treating that computer like it's a brand new computer and installing everything fresh. Once Mylio is installed, sign in with your Mylio account. Sync will begin automatically. Confirm the new computer is syncing correctly, and then when you're ready, if you are replacing an older computer, take that old computer and unregister it. And that's all you need to do when you get a new computer. If you get an external hard drive, first thing you're going to want to do is reformat that hard drive because it comes pre-installed with that extra software that you probably don't need. Do the APFS for Mac OS or NTFS for Windows. Confirm your existing vaults, whatever vaults you're currently using before you got the new drive. Make sure those are fully synced. If your drive is failing, act quickly and add a new drive before doing anything else. Go into Dashboard, Devices, and choose Add Vault, and let that new vault get as much information as it can. Let Mylio fully sync, and then if you are retiring one of those drives, unregister it when you're ready. So just to kind of recap here, Check your sink. Make sure you have at least two vaults. If you're getting a new computer, do a fresh installation of Mylio. And again, at the end, before you unregister anything, check the sink. JC, is there anything else that you want to add here in the recap?
No, no, I think you cover everything. The only thing I want to discuss and Mark asked that as a question is how does this work with Mylio Drive Plus as a vault or any other cloud vault? So we'll take that as a question and cover it so that people understand the difference between having a local vault and having a only a cloud vault, the advantage of disadvantage of both.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one to cover. And we are at the point for questions, so we can go ahead and address that first. I think, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure, we can start with that one. So the 3-2-1 backup basically explains or incorporates this idea of having three copies of your data in at least two devices, one of them is offsite. And that is one of the biggest advantages of a cloud-based vault is that that repository of data is not in the same physical location, right? So I have three local copies of my data here at home, but if something happens to my house, having three copies doesn't matter because, if the house gets flooded, they're all underwater. But having that cloud copy allows me to recover from a cloud device. So yeah, it's a great, but actually it has two advantages. One is this um, remote access to a copy of your data, and not just your data, but also your catalog. Remember, all that organization is also being stored to your cloud-based device. The other is convenience, right? If I'm around town with just my phone and my phone only has thumbnails on it, because I have a cloud copy, my computer doesn't have to be on at home for me to get a better version of my data because I can get it from the cloud. So anytime I have access to the internet, I have access to a better version of my data if I have Mylio Drive Plus or a different cloud repository. The disadvantage is that it's slow and you have to bring everything from the cloud. And think of it in this particular scenario, you have one local drive and a cloud backup. That's not bad. That's pretty good. If that local drive dies, you can buy a new drive and Malia will when you add that drive as a vault, start populating it from your cloud-based repository. But all of that data has to travel through your computer before it gets to that drive because, drives don't have computational capacity. They can't connect to the internet. The computer has to connect to the internet on behalf of that drive. So if the storage on your local computer is limited, if you have very little storage on your local computer, consider that all that data not only has to be downloaded, which is slow, it has to be passed through that computer. And if the computer has limited storage, Mali has no choice but to go very slow because it has to like download two files, move them to the hard drive, then download two more, remove them from the internal drive of the computer, download two more. So there's a not physical, but a real constraint when doing this. So having multiple local repositories is great. A lot of people ask support or ask me if, just having the cloud only as their only location for their data is good enough. And my answer is always not really. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but because of this constraint of being dependent on of something that you don't have full control of. So having something that's tangible and that you can control locally is always a good idea. Having both is ideal. I hope that answered Mark's question.
I think
Um,
so. I think that covered it pretty well.
yeah,
Looking through the chat here, looks like Therese said, I had four hard drives fail. I have two new Seagates sitting in my home. I'm traveling. Seagate has warned me my data will not resemble the folder organization on the failed drive or the file names. That is one of the tragic things with file recovery is it does sometimes come back to you in a huge mess. So if your drive completely fails and you have to have it professionally recovered, what you get back is not going to resemble anything that you organized.
yeah,
You'll be probably pretty happy just that the files still exist. I had both image and doc formats on the failed drives. As I understand it, I can ignore the images on this restore data drive since I still have four vaults that are in sync. That's awesome. My question is, if I do find some images I want to import into Mylio, will Mylio recognize duplicate content since I assume a lot of the metadata has been lost? Yes, it should. So if the file itself is an exact duplicate, when you go to, I would do a copy import into Mylio. So take whatever image files, use the copy, and that will automatically exclude any duplicates that are found. So it will only bring in any media that is not already in your Mylio library.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that you can do in that scenario, if for example, losing a drive has caused lost originals, or you're not sure if any of the data that came back from that drive is really in your library, you can always do a copy import. If you have lost originals, do a copy import and do not exclude duplicates. Let those duplicates come back into your library. I do suggest you copy them to a unique folder. So create a new folder and say, from my backup, and then copy import everything in there. Then you can run dedupe, and if the media that you brought in is a mash to media for which you have a lost original, now you can fix the lost original. And if the media wasn't in the library to begin with, then now it is. So,
Excellent. All right. Michael says removing old iPad, adding new one, course of action the same or. So when you're adding a new mobile device, typically you're going to be, I would say for most people with an iPad or iPhone, you're replacing it with a new one. So when I go out and get a new iPad or phone, my old one I'm not going to be using anymore. I'm probably going to trade that one in. So in that instance, you're likely going to use the automatic restore and tell Apple or whatever to copy all of your information over from one device to the other. The thing there again, you have to make sure you never open up Mylio on the old device again, or you're going to end up with two instances of that same device, and Mylio can get messy. So I would say just make sure you don't open up Mylio on the old iPad anymore, or if you want to have both iPads running simultaneously, delete the copied over install of Mylio on the new one, go to the App Store, download it fresh, log in. Mylio will see that as a new distinct device. Anything else to add there, JC?
no, that's exactly right. And in the case of a mobile device, whether it's Android or iOS, so any tablet or any phone, uh, removing the Mylio software resets the application. And that is a different process on a computer, laptop or a desktop computer than on a mobile device. On a mobile device, because of the way the operating systems on mobile work, when you remove or uninstall an app, all the data associated with that app also goes away. So you're in essence resetting the app completely. So going back to that original concept of Mali is both the software and the service, this device never existed, but the software is on the device because it came from a backup. You reset the software. In the case of a mobile device, you reset the software by uninstalling and reinstalling. When you launch Mali for the first time, it's going to come up with like, "Hey, let's add your account. Who are you? Let's go." And that's where you add your account. You add it as a new device, and that is registering that device in the service as a new distinct device. Um,
Perfect. All right, next question is from Zara. I currently have two vaults. One is my PC and one external drive. On the PC, Windows and Mylio are installed in the C drive, and my main linked folder is on the E drive, which is a separate secondary hard drive connected to the PC. Now my HDD is full, and I'm planning to replace it with a larger memory and assign it the same E name. I'm not going to format my PC, so I'm not planning to format the C drive. If I just copy the contents from the old E drive to the new E drive, is my understanding correct that I will not need to unregister, re-register the drive in Mylio? That's probably a situation where you want her to reach out to support.
um, Potentially. So in this case, the only thing that's on that E drive is a link folder. The drive itself is not a device in Mylio, right? So when you have multiple internal drives, Mylio doesn't differentiate those drives as being separate. Mylio only sees the computer. By default, the Mylio system folder is on the C drive. That's part of what she's seeing. But
Mhm.
she linked a folder from the E drive, and that folder is showing on her computer, on her Mylio account, as being linked from that computer. But where the data resides is a separate drive within that computer. So all she has to do is quit Mylio completely, do a data copy of the folder structure exactly as it exists into the new drive, and make sure that the new drive has the same drive letter when it's uh, replaced. And the next time she launched Mylio up, Mylio will be like, okay, E drive, the folder that I want, still there. So it's none the wiser. If you're not sure, yeah, absolutely contact support and we'll let you know. But this is a good example of why link folders can create confusion, because in this scenario, you have a link folder that's associated with the computer, but there is a sub device within that computer, this E drive, that Mylio is not aware of. So, yeah, but
Good
this one's actually
clarification.
pretty simple. So, yes. Mhm.
Shirley says, just to clarify for the super newbie, if I've lost access to a phone, it's okay to unregister it. I won't lose anything that's been saved from it. That's correct. If anything that's already synced to Mylio from that phone is in Mylio, and you can go ahead and unregister that phone, no problem.
So I answered Shirley's question and I gave her the same answer you gave her, but I did add a caveat, which is if you lose your phone, but let's say it's an iPhone and you were making backups of that phone to iCloud, you could buy a new phone and have it restore from that backup, and then that phone is going to look like your old phone. So in that scenario, you don't have to unregister the device because the new hardware is going to present itself to Mylio as if it was the old hardware. If you don't have a backup, then you're adding a new device, and in that case, you do unregister the old device.
Perfect. Let's see here. Teresa's paid distro for Mac and Windows. I do keep one or more Mylio vaults formatted for APFS for Macs and one formatted NTFS for Windows 11, then a few more exFAT to transfer between the two. I tried to use iCloud for Windows, but that jacked up my PC big time. So keeping the environment separate, Mylio lets me move back and forth. Love it. That's awesome. Teresa also says, how do I access the recordings of these sessions? That is a great question. You're going to do that over here in the community. You're going to go to community.mylio.com and you're going to scroll down on the left to coffee breaks. And Lori usually gets those posted within a day or two of the live session. So if she has time, she'll get it done today. Otherwise, it'll be posted probably Monday. Let's see here. And I believe, Edward, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I've got two Mylio vaults and an external drive for Time Machine. If I get a new computer, can I still use the Time Machine, or am I about to go about it wrong?
If you get a new computer, so it depends on how much room is left on your Time Machine drive. You can use a Time Machine drive that you use with an old computer with a newer one. Kind of a best practice, though, what I suggest for people, if you get a new computer, get a fresh Time Machine drive. Just kind of the timing of making sure your hardware is all current and healthy. Getting a new one is a best practice, but yes, you can have the old Time Machine connected to your new computer. It's going to basically show up as a new folder on that Time Machine
Yeah.
for that drive.
Yeah. At the very least, once your new computer is all set up and you know that it has all the data you need, reformat that time machine drive so that it's kind of a clean slate, then re-add it as a time machine. Otherwise, it's going to have a folder with a lot of data on it taking room that you don't use. Um,
Yeah, that's
Plus,
true.
reformatting a drive is kind of like giving your car a tune-up. It's a good thing to do from time to time.
Yep, absolutely. All right. I
Mhm.
think, oops, looks like, oh, no, we got all the questions. Edward, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. I think that covers it for today. Before we wrap up, Just a reminder that we are having a couple of things that we'd like your feedback on the community. The first one is a survey. We're asking anyone, whether you're brand new to Mylio, even if you're just thinking about Mylio or you've been with us for a very long time, there's a survey there that'll take, I think, 5 to 10 minutes of your time. And it's really in depth. And we're asking for some really solid feedback on what you would like to see in the future of Mylio. We also have another post from Rich Harrington in the community asking for feedback on the new navigation designs that we're kicking around and we're getting ready to start implementing into whatever the next version is of Mylio. So take a look at that. Let us know what you think. We designed this for you and we want to make sure that we are meeting your needs and making things effective and pleasant for you to use. So please share your thoughts and we will get that in front of the product team. Let's see here. Mark says, can Mylio support see my devices and see how they're configured and recommend fixes? Yes, if you go through the app and you do that help menu, contact Mylio support, you can go ahead and check the box to include logs. And yes, they can see all of your devices. They can see the format of your linked folders. They can't see what's in them, but they can see what's linked to what and give you
Yeah.
whatever recommendations you
Yeah,
need.
we get a configuration file that basically tells us your devices, what folders are in them, and the path. And because we're really geeky, we can look at the path and kind of tell, oh, that is on an external drive or that is on a separate internal drive and things like that. So yeah, but that's the only way we get that information. And those logs and that configuration file, that is a snapshot in time. So if you contact support today and then you go and make a bunch of changes, when we respond to you, because sometimes it takes us a day or two to respond to you. When we respond to you, we're giving you answers based on the last known information, which might have been from a few days ago. So if you make changes, let us know or just submit new logs. So when we go to look at the logs, um, we have the freshest version possible. And Angela, I'm sorry to make you do this, but do you mind going to Mylio and showing that option of contact support?
Yep. So go to the help menu
Yeah, and you can do this from
on the
any
desktop.
device. Yeah. Now, there's another option in that help menu as well, if you don't mind going back, called submit logs. If you click submit logs,
Oh,
sorry. Yeah,
uh,
go back. So in the help menu, there's two options. There's contact support and there's submit logs. If you submit logs, your logs are going to get uploaded to the server where we store this data, but we don't know you did it. So if you submit logs and you're waiting for us to answer, you're going to be waiting a long time. So make sure that you use contact support, create a support case, then we know about it. And if we need new logs or we need, fresh logs or other options, or we need a copy of your catalog, we will tell you, and then you can use the submit log option. So a lot of people make that mistake not knowing that just clicking submit logs, we don't know you send them. So thank you.
yep.
Andrea, just a quick question. But on the help menu, there's
Mhm.
two boxes. One was info to send, and the other was fill out web form. Not that one, the other one. Just
Yeah, under
contact
contact
help.
support.
Oh,
There, just yeah, that one. What's do we need to be do we need to be filling in info to send? And I think it's asking for attaching logs, and you could send one picture, or do we
Right.
skip it and just go to
mhm.
fill out web form?
You can, in most cases, you can just go to fill out web form. By default, if you haven't touched these settings at all, by default, we're gonna get a screenshot of whatever's in the screen at that time. So in this case, we will get Angela's calendar view. Uh, and we would get basic logs of the device that you're working on. So in this case, her MacBook Pro. Um, they are instances where we want more stuff, or if you don't want a screenshot sent to us, of course, you can turn that off. Um, so by default, that's what's sent. Sometimes we might say, oh, we need logs from this other device, and then you would go and push one of those buttons. Or we want all of your logs, right? Because um, the problem that you're asking about is from a week ago. So the logs that we get for today might only include the last 24 or 48 hours. But when you click that all button, Mali will go into your computer in the folder where we keep logs and it'll send every log that it's in there, which might span weeks. Andrew, do you mind scrolling down in that section, please? The other thing that's useful here is attach an extra file. So for example, if you're contacting us and saying, um, I have this new camera and Mali doesn't recognize the file when I import it, you might want to include a sample of that file. So that's what that attach an extra file is. Maybe you have a couple of screenshots that you took that you want us to see, or you want to include a sample file or something. Or maybe you wrote up a lot of customers do this. They write up a big PDF with graphics explaining what it is that they want, and they attach that as an extra file. All of that, of course, is helpful, and it'll help us um, respond to you in as few emails as possible instead of having to have a lot of back and forth. So that's really useful. And you can send pretty big files using that. You can even send movie files with that. If you have multiple files to send together, put them all in one zip file and then attach that as an extra file.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right. I think that's it. Just a reminder, we also have live Q&A next week, Tuesday, Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Would love to see you guys there. It's an open forum where you can ask me anything. I'll do my best to help on pretty much anything that's photography adjacent. And then next Friday, we'll be talking about the actions menu in Mylio, and we'll go
I'm,
over all the different tools that are there and things that can make your life easier with Mylio. JC, what are you laughing at?
I'm cracking up about the title, Three Dots Endless Possibilities. I love it.
I just see you laughing, and I was like, what
And
did I say?
if you think the actions menu has endless possibility, you should look at the more menu.
Right. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this was a helpful session, and big thank you to JC for jumping in and helping out with the questions and
Thanks for
giving
having
additional
me.
context. Always a joy to have you here. And thank you, Lori, for helping out in the chat and making sure everybody had all the links they need. We will see you guys next week. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.